The sun hung low over the canyon, like an old lantern burning its last wick, casting long shadows across the dust-choked trail that led into Withered Gulch. The wind came dry and sour, pulling threads of grit across the scrub. A lone rider approached the edge of town, mounted not on a proud stallion, but beside a sag-backed mule. He wore a faded trail coat that reached his knees and a hat drawn low, the kind that did more than it revealed. Few noticed his arrival. That was the way of Withered Gulch, a place that tried not to care too much for new faces, especially those who came quiet. The stranger dismounted before the horse stalls near the trading post, his boots crunching softly against the parched ground. He paused, as if letting the earth remember his weight. The mare he approached was a lean, muscled bay, dark-eyed and wary, roped inside a stall of slatted wood. There was no seller in sight, just a chalkboard nailed to the fence post for sale. $60, not broken in. He opened the gate with a creak that cut through the silence. Dust swirled lazily. As he stepped inside, the mare's ears flicked, but it wasn't her that drew his attention. In the dimness of the stall, half buried in hay, was a pair of eyes. Human, wide, dirt-smeared, and unmistakably pleading. A woman lay bound at the wrists, her lips split, one cheek bruised like a plum. She didn't speak. She didn't cry out. But her stare held more than panic. It held a quiet warning. She didn't want to be found. Not yet. The stranger's breath caught only for a moment. Then he bent at the waist, brushed his hand across the mare's flank, and inspected the animal with a casual air. Behind him, a board creaked. Two men leaned against the corral fence, watching with coiled stillness. One of them spat and adjusted the brim of his hat. "Fine stock," the stranger said aloud to no one in particular. He left the stall without a backward glance. The gate shut with the same slow creak. The woman remained in the shadows, unmoving. Dust floated in the shaft of afternoon light between the slats. The saloon sat near the center of town, crooked in its foundation, like it leaned away from some long-forgotten fire. The stranger walked inside, ordered black coffee, and sat near the back, where the light didn't reach so easy. The piano was silent, though a drunk fiddled with the keys. The few patrons looked up when he entered, then quickly returned to their drinks. Minutes later, the two men from the fence entered and took up seats across the room. One of them, the broad-shouldered one with a snake tattoo curling down his neck, tilted his head. "You new here, mister?" The stranger didn't answer at first. He sipped his coffee and let the bitter heat center him. Then he said, "Just passing through." "Plenty pass through. Few stick. What's your name?" The man's tone was casual, but the question hung heavy in the smoke-filled air. The stranger met his gaze for the first time. "Name's Holt," he said. "Looking for a horse." The other man smirked. "That's so. Lots of good horses in town. Found one out by the stalls." "Ah," the tattooed one said, dragging the syllable out like honey over a blade. "That stall's special. Not for just anyone." Holt nodded as if he hadn't heard the edge in the man's voice. "Didn't look broke. But I like a challenge." "You don't say." The barkeep wiped a glass in the corner and didn't intervene. No one did. That was the way of Withered Gulch. Later, Holt stood outside the general store, gazing at the trail leading back out into the red rock. The sky had turned copper, the wind sharper. He lit a match on the heel of his boot and drew it to the cigarette pinched between his fingers. The tip flared, then dimmed. Behind him, voices drifted from the saloon. The name Clay Riker carried across the porch like a ghost riding the wind. Riker, leader of the Red Hand Gang. Men who robbed stagecoaches, raised homesteads, and left no graves behind them. Holt didn't flinch at the name. He'd been chasing it for too long. He made his way back toward the stalls under cloak of dusk. The mare was still there, ears twitching at his approach. He didn't open the gate this time, just leaned against the fence and listened. No sound from within, no whisper, no eyes watching. The stall was empty. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Just beyond the livery, a figure stepped into view and back out again. Fast. Too fast. Holt stepped away from the fence and turned down the alley. There, nestled beside a stack of crates, something glinted in the dirt. A hair comb. Ivory. cracked clean down the middle. He picked it up slowly. The engraving on its spine was worn, but he knew the pattern. He'd seen it once in a photo, long ago. A Federal scout's daughter, missing near the Kansas border. Lorna Graves. He pocketed the comb, turned, and walked toward the edge of town, without a word. The wind stirred behind him, and the dust rose like smoke from an unseen fire. The saloon smelled of tobacco, old wood, and something rotting behind the walls. Holt sat at a corner table, fingers wrapped loosely around a tin cup of rye, watching the room through the smoky haze. Laughter bubbled near the bar where a wiry man in a black vest, Clay Riker, held court, his voice smooth, cruel, and sticky as molasses. Riker's boots were caked in red dust, the same shade as the Gulch walls outside. He leaned over the bar and slapped one of his men on the back, spinning tales about desert crossings and untamed stock they'd picked up near the border. Holt's jaw tightened. He remembered that voice from a wanted poster, a dusty bounty office, a burned cabin in Missouri. Riker hadn't seen him yet. Holt preferred it that way for now. "Town's quiet," someone muttered nearby. Holt didn't answer. He simply sipped his drink and let the words slide past. Every tick of his mind stayed fixed on that stall, on the eyes in the hay, on the woman who hadn't screamed. Across the room, one of Riker's men, the one with the tattooed neck, was watching him again. The barkeep noticed too, but kept his head down, polishing the same glass over and over as though it might someday shine clean. At dusk, Holt wandered back through town with the slow gait of a man who didn't have anywhere urgent to be. But his eyes never stopped moving. He passed the blacksmith's, the telegraph shack, the empty sheriff's office, its door half-swinging like the whole town had given up enforcing law. He circled wide around the stables before easing back toward the horse stalls. No one watched him, but he felt the town breathe differently now, as if its lungs held something foul. The bay mare was still there, quiet, watching, but the woman was gone. The straw looked freshly disturbed, scattered in a rush. A crust of blood stained one corner, dark and flaking. No sign of a struggle outside. Whoever had moved her had done it fast, and done it clean. Holt scanned the dirt. A scuff marked near the rear fence. Another, angled east, toward the edge of town. He crouched low and let his fingers drift through the dust, like a reader tracing a page. Something brittle lay half-buried under the trough. He fished it out. The broken comb again. Only now he saw the back edge of it had letters, worn but legible. He breathed once, slow, then stood and walked to the mule. The saddlebag yielded a folded map, yellowed and soft at the creases. He marked a trail leading east into the hills, rugged country, broken with dry ravines and sandstone ridges. The kind of land where echoes got lost and people disappeared for good. He mounted the bay mare. She shifted under him, unfamiliar, but strong. He clicked his tongue and rode out past the edge of Withered Gulch, the setting sun bleeding orange into the sky. The canyon yawned ahead, blackening with dusk. Holt didn't hesitate. The trail narrowed to a shelf of rock that hugged the edge of a cliff face. Far below, dry creeks twisted through the earth, like veins drained of blood. A coyote barked once, then fell silent. By the second hour of night, Holt had found the old campfire, still warm. Ash stirred in the wind. He dismounted and crouched near it, fingers brushing over discarded rations, a tin cup, a torn strip of cloth snagged on a juniper branch. Blood on the cloth. Faint. He was close. From behind a ridge came the soft jangle of bridles, a grunt of horses, the murmur of low voices. He crept forward on foot now, boots barely touching stone. The camp sat in a hollow below, a crude circle of bedrolls and crates. 2 lean-tos thrown up in haste. 7 men. 6 slept or sat by the fire. 1 stood guard. And just beyond, in the shadows, a figure sat tied to a support beam. Head slumped, hands bound, dark hair matted with sweat. Lorna Graves. Holt inhaled slow. The ridge offered cover, and moonlight gave just enough to plan by. He mapped their positions in his mind. 2 by the mules, 1 sharpening a knife near the fire, another pacing with a rifle slung lazy across his chest. His hand went to the revolver at his belt. He could shoot 2, maybe 3 before they even blinked, but not before one of them reached her. Too risky. He retreated behind the ridge and waited. Wind kicked dust over the edge. The mare below snorted quietly, pawed the earth. He needed a distraction. Something loud. Something that wouldn't come from him. His eyes drifted toward the dynamite box, half hidden beneath a tarp near the far lean-to. Stupid place to store it, but most outlaws weren't known for wisdom. He returned to the mare and opened his saddlebag again. Matches, a bottle of oil, and tucked deep in the bottom, canvas fused cord. 15 minutes later, a small trail of oil led upwind toward the crates. At the edge of the ridge, he struck a match, lit the cord, and stepped back. The explosion shattered the silence like thunder from heaven. Horses screamed, men yelled. Fire curled up from the crates in a vicious orange bloom. Holt moved fast, down the slope, through dust and flame. The first man never saw him coming. A single blow to the throat dropped him. The second, turning from the horses, caught a bullet through the knee before he could aim. Holt ducked low, rolled behind a crate, fired twice more, 2 more down. Screams now. Riker's voice bellowed somewhere near the fire. Who the hell's out there? Holt didn't answer. He was already cutting Lorna free. She flinched as his blade touched her bonds, then froze, recognition flickering in her eyes. You, she whispered. From the stall. Quiet, he said. Can you walk? She nodded, dazed but alert. She didn't look broken. She looked furious. He handed her a revolver. She checked it with the speed of someone who knew how to shoot. My father sent you? I owe your father, Holt replied. I keep my debts. Gunfire cracked behind them. Lorna ducked low and followed Holt around the burning crates. They moved fast, weaving through chaos. Then Riker stepped into view, coat smoking, eyes wild. He raised his rifle, and Lorna shot him. Not in the heart, in the hand. The rifle clattered to the dirt. Riker howled, dropped to one knee. Holt was on him a second later, boot pinning his chest, gun at his temple. But Riker smiled through the blood. Thought you died in that fire, he rasped. Your wife screamed for you. Holt didn't pull the trigger. Not yet. Instead, he hit Riker with the butt of the revolver, hard enough to drop him cold. Lorna stepped beside him, breathing hard. There'll be more. There always are, Holt said. They tied Riker and the 2 surviving men to a post. Horses hitched behind them. Lorna mounted the bay mare as if born to it. Holt climbed onto the mule. Withered Gulch waited on the horizon, just beginning to stir with the pink edge of dawn. As they rode back, neither spoke, but the dust behind them carried a story that the town would never forget. By the time they returned to Withered Gulch, the sun had clawed its way above the rim of the hills, casting long, lean shadows over the silent main street. Doors creaked open. Dust rose as townsfolk stepped into the light, blinking wary. Holt rode at the front, the reins of the mule and the stolen bay mare in one hand, and 3 bound outlaws dragging behind like refuse in the other. Lorna rode beside him, her face streaked with soot, blood dried along one brow. But her chin was up, eyes clear. There wasn't a soul in the square who didn't stare when she dismounted and walked straight toward the blacksmith's bell, striking it with the heel of her revolver. Each clang echoed like judgment through the hollow town. Clay Riker, bloodied and beaten, was tied to a water trough. His 2 surviving men slumped beside him, stripped of weapons, pride, and most of their teeth. Holt watched from under the brim of his hat as faces emerged. Shopkeepers, the grocer's boy, the undertaker. Even the barkeep crept from behind the saloon, wiping his hands on his apron as if to erase cowardice. Some of you knew, Lorna said, her voice slicing the air. You knew they were taking women. My sisters. Others. You saw the wagons. You heard the screams. No one answered. The silence wasn't blank. It was loaded, trembling. Guilt was a wind that could knock a man over if he stood in it too long. I came here because I thought I had to buy back my blood, she said. But this, she gestured to the unconscious man. This is what they fear more than gold. Holt didn't speak. He just tied the reins to the post and stepped back. You, Lorna pointed to the blacksmith. You sold me that stall. You saw them shove me in and looked away. I didn't know. The blacksmith stammered. She took a slow step forward. You didn't want to know. The man hung his head. Someone coughed. A woman cried softly behind a lace curtain. The town didn't break, but it bent toward truth. Sheriff Ellery arrived last, mustering all the swagger left in his bones. His badge gleamed like a lie. "What's this mess?" he asked, looking everywhere but at Riker. "You tell us." Holt replied, voice quiet. Ellery swallowed. "I never knew he was, never had proof." "You had the gall to wear that star," Lorna said. "You don't deserve the dust on your boots." Ellery stepped back, his face pale. Then a voice rose from the back, gravelly, uncertain. "Miss Graves, your father, he was a good man. None of us wanted this. But fear can poison a town." Lorna nodded. "Then it's time we cut out the rot." By nightfall, Riker and his men were locked inside the town's only jail. Not under Ellery's watch. He was stripped of his badge by sundown. The town council, reawakened by guilt and fury, had appointed a new marshal, an older woman named Ruth Callie, who'd lost her daughter the previous spring. She wore the badge like a blade. But justice had only begun. Lorna stood beside Holt as they loaded the wagon. She'd packed light, just her saddle, a few provisions, and a faded photograph of 3 girls on a riverbank. "You sure?" Holt asked. She nodded. "I ain't staying here. There's more out there. Others like me. If they're alive, they deserve to come home. If they're not," she swallowed, "I'll lay stones for everyone." He didn't ask why she wanted him to come. He didn't need to. He just untied the mule and swung into the saddle. They rode north, into canyon country, where the land folded in on itself like the pages of a burned book. Days passed. No signs. No trails. Then came the marks. Scorched stones, scraps of cloth, a rusted earring. They followed the clues through arroyos and ridgelines, where vultures spun slow circles above. On the 5th day, they found the remains of a camp, long abandoned, bones scattered under a thistle bush, the remnants of what looked like a locket crushed beneath a wagon wheel. Lorna picked it up, opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a drawing of a girl barely 10. "She was from Sonora," she said. "They took her near Yuma. We heard her cry at night. I tried to fight once. They broke my ribs for it." Holt looked at her, truly looked. What she carried inside her was heavier than bullets. She dropped the locket into a shallow grave and covered it with river stones. No words. Just a breath let go. The next camp was fresher. 3 men. Not Rikers, but of the same ilk, rotten teeth, animal eyes, quick hands. Holt waited until nightfall. They struck with silence and fire. Lorna moved like vengeance, shaped into flesh, her shots deliberate, clean. When it was over, 2 were dead, and the last was begging under the shadow of Holt's revolver. "We're just haulers," the man cried. "Don't even know the girls' names. Just take 'em to the drop." "Where?" Lorna asked, gun pressed to his temple. "Sand Briar, beyond the rim. They got a place in the rocks, call it the pit." Lorna lowered the gun. Holt fired. The wind howled through the canyon, like a cry too long held in. The next morning, they climbed toward Sand Briar. The path narrowed until it was little more than a goat track etched into stone. Somewhere beyond the ridge lay the pit, whatever that meant. Lorna's hands shook, but she didn't slow. Holt kept beside her, the weight of memory in every step. At the crest, they saw it. A basin cut into the rock, ringed with shacks and fencing. Guards strolled along the perimeter, and beyond the corrals, dozens of women, some with faces too hollow to name, others who looked toward the rising sun with hope they hadn't yet lost. Lorna dismounted. "This ends here," she whispered. Holt didn't argue. The canyon below was about to scream. The wind was hot and dry as breath from a furnace, scraping across the canyon's rim. Lorna lay flat on her belly, eyes trained on the encampment below, every inch of her tensed like a drawn wire. Holt was beside her, checking the cartridges in his rifle one last time. Below them, the pit simmered with cruelty, makeshift barracks, chained women, and guards laughing as if their sins hadn't yet stained the stones. No town to hold them accountable. No law but the one they made with the lash and rifle. That was about to change. "You ready?" Holt asked. No, Lorna said, voice steady. But I'm going anyway. They crept down the ridge under cover of dawn, the sun bleeding into the sky, staining the canyon walls red. By the time they reached the perimeter, the guards were still wiping sleep from their eyes, unaware death had already taken position. Lorna took the first shot. It dropped the watchman on the east post before he could scream. Holt followed with 2 precise cracks. 2 more men crumpled beside the gate. The silence that followed was brief. Then chaos shattered the morning. A bell rang, a clanging panic, followed by shouts, footfalls, gunfire. Lorna and Holt pushed forward, cutting through the outer fence with bolt cutters she'd kept since her escape. The women inside stirred, some crawling to their feet, others shrinking back in disbelief. "Get ready," Lorna shouted. "We're not leaving anyone behind." The women hesitated, until one of them, a rail-thin girl with a swollen jaw, stood and stepped toward the opening. Lorna caught her gaze. Recognition passed between them. "Marta," she breathed. The girl nodded. "They said you were dead." "Not yet," Lorna replied. Gunfire cracked from the west tower. Holt rolled to cover behind a water barrel and returned fire, nailing the shooter through the slats. Another guard charged from the storage hut with a shotgun. Lorna caught him square in the chest before he could aim. Inside the compound, women were moving now, slowly, cautiously. Lorna urged them forward, guiding them toward the breached fence, toward freedom. Holt covered the retreat, laying down fire like a storm god. Bullets chipped stone and tore into canvas, but neither of them flinched. 2 more men emerged from the stable, wild-eyed and panicked. One aimed at Holt. Lorna didn't blink. She shot the man's hand clean off, then turned and kicked the other in the knee, dropping him before delivering the butt of her rifle to his temple. Blood soaked the sand. Then came the fire. Someone inside the pit, maybe in desperation, maybe revenge, lit the supply shed. Flames climbed skyward with a greedy roar. Black smoke boiled up, casting hellish shadows across the walls. The horses screamed in their stalls, fighting against tether ropes and flame. Lorna ran to them without thinking, untying them one by one, slapping their flanks to drive them out of the smoke. That's when she saw the last man. He was older than the others, but he moved with purpose. A scar ran from his ear to his chin, and hate was etched in every line of his face. "Didn't think you'd come back," he growled, leveling a pistol at her chest. "I never left," she answered. They fired at the same time. Her shot caught him in the throat. He missed. He dropped to his knees, gurgling, eyes wide in disbelief, as if the devil had cheated him. Then he fell face first into the dust, blood darkening the earth. The compound was nearly empty now. Women rode out 2 to a horse, tears streaking their faces. Marta clung to Lorna's side like a shadow. Holt found her by the gate, bleeding from a gash along his arm but otherwise upright. "We got him," he said. Lorna looked around, at the smoldering wreckage, the bodies. The sky turned copper with smoke. "No," she whispered. "We just started." They rode out together, a caravan of the broken and brave. Behind them, the fire took what it would, cleansing what it could not forgive. The canyon swallowed the flames, but not the memory. That night, under a bowl of stars, the women camped beside a shallow creek. Some wept, others just stared, but there was something new among them, something sharp-edged and rising. Hope. Lorna sat beside the fire, Marta curled beside her, head on her shoulder. Holt passed her a tin cup of water, then sat without a word. "I thought I'd feel peace," she murmured, "but it ain't that." "No," Holt said. "Peace is quiet. This is justice." They watched the flames crackle, their faces carved by firelight. "I want to ride north," Lorna said. "They've got camps in Wyoming, Montana. I heard rumors." He nodded. "I'll ride with you." A long pause followed. "Why'd you help me?" she asked finally. "Back in Withered Gulch. You didn't know me." Holt stared into the fire. "I knew the look. My wife had it. Before she died, she wanted someone to find her sister. I never did." Lorna reached for his hand. He let her take it. "Then let's find all of them," she said, "for the ones who didn't come back." Above them, the stars burned on, silent and unblinking. In the history books, No one would write about Lorna Graves or the man who rode beside her. But in the hush between wind gusts, in the crackle of fire, in the stories whispered from mother to daughter in prairie cabins and canyon shadows, they would live forever. Because sometimes legends aren't born, they're forged, in blood on the saddle and fire in the sky.